All right, welcome, everybody. We are together to look at our Spokane candidates, our progressive candidates on the eastern side of Washington. We are co-hosted by the People's Party of Washington, the Black Panthers Party of Washington, Washington Progressive Party, A Future to Believe in, and the Party for Socialism and Liberation. It looks like that our panelist for the Party of Socialism and Liberation will not be able to make it tonight, so we deeply apologize for that, or he deeply apologizes he's unable to make it. I would like to go through real quick and start having our representatives from the party organizations to introduce themselves so our candidates know who's here and listening, if you do not mind. And let's go ahead and go to, see, he's not here yet. So Mark is going to be hopefully jumping in for the People's Party of Washington, but Rebecca is going ahead and kick it off and kind of talk about what the People's Party of Washington is about. And then Mark will most likely join in later. She'll hear his name versus Rebecca's from here on out. Rebecca?
Yeah, so I'm the interim state secretary for People's Party of Washington, and then Mark Mixon is our state chair, and that will be joining us later. And I asked one of our fabulous volunteers to send me a little blurb about the People's Party of Washington, and I'm going to read what she sent because I like it. Hi, I'm Rebecca, the supreme goddess of the People's Party of Washington. Our acronym PPOW foreshadows our intent to shadow the political establishment. We put people before profit and empower people to make a positive difference in Washington. And that pretty much sums it up for us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next, we have Annette Hobbs. Annette is with the Washington Progressive Party. Annette? You probably have to come off of mute.
Yes. Hi, I'm Annette Hobbs. I'm the treasurer of the Washington Progressive Party. The Progressive Party has been around a long time. It started in 1912 in response to the massive wealth, poverty and income inequality way back in the robber baron era. In Washington, it was started with a group of progressive, like-minded individuals in 2002 and has gone through a number of rebirths, so to speak. We are inspired by Bernie and his political revolution and believe that, you know, the government should not be for the top 1%, but it should be for the people, of the people, and by the people, as it was originally created to be. And that's about it for me. Glad to be here.
Oh, we're so happy you're here to join us. Thank you so much, Annette. And Bunchy did make it. Bunchy Carter with the Black Panthers Party. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk about what your party is about?
Absolutely. My name is Bunchy Carter. My friends know me as Seven. I'm the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party in Washington. We are based in Tacoma and Lakewood. However, we do service the entire state of Washington currently. My party is, to put it in a nutshell, we definitely believe that the current system that is in place and the people who represent it are enemies of the people. And we want to remove them and put people in positions of power who are ready to act in the best interest of the community and not in the best interest of big business. So, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I'm Rhonda Walker. I'm with A Future to Believe in. We are transitioning from the Our Revolution Washington, and formerly known as the Washington Berniecrats Coalition. We've been together since 2016, fighting corruption. And of course, we work on a top down, getting rid of the top, working and bringing the bottom up. Thank you to all the party members and groups that are here. We have some candidates joining us from Eastern Washington, and I'd love to give each candidate a couple minutes for a brief introduction and a quick policy overview. We're going to first start with candidates for District 1, Position 2 of the Spokane City Council. And first up, we have Luke. Luke, would you mind introducing yourself and go ahead and give a couple minute introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to see these organizations together, trying to make change in our state. I'm Luke Jasmin III. I'm a first generation Haitian American. I just want to say that I'm an action person. So when y'all talk about your ideals and what you believe, I spent the past 6 years making sure that we not only organize as childcare providers, but we influence legislation. This past year, we were behind the Fair Starts for Kids Act. So when you talk about the top 1%, I have actual experience with making sure the capital gains tax that y'all saw, we were behind that. The $800 million that's going to early childhood education, we were behind that. During COVID, I saw my teachers coming in every single day. And as y'all know, with early learning teachers, they get paid a very low wage for the work that they do, the essential work that they do every single day for the community. And our group, we were behind making sure that now they are going to be covered with health insurance, and there's a 10% increase directly to their salaries coming down the pike. So I'm a person of action, and I'm glad I'm here with organizations that are about action too. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Next up, same position, Naghmana.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. So I'm an immigrant. I'm Muslim. I am progressive. I'm a woman, Southeast Asian descent, and I'm a single mom. I'm an educator and I'm a scientist. All these intersectionalities mean that I have very definite opinions about how things need to be done, how things should be done, and what I want to see, whether it's my son applying for jobs or, his education. And of course, in 2015, there was a racial profiling initiative that was placed on, they were trying to place on the ballot in Spokane, and it was called Proposition 1. I put together a coalition of 26 organizations, and we sued that group and basically had them remove it. The courts threw it out, that initiative, because it would have made the city of Spokane unsafe. It would have been unsafe for not just people of color, but for just pretty much everyone, domestic violence, crime, people would have been loath to come forward with information, etc. So we had it removed. They appealed, it went to appellate court, they threw it out, and they said we're sending it to Olympia for review. Of course, and under review in Olympia, it got thrown out. And because they upheld the judgment that it was going to make Spokane City unsafe for residents. And so that's when I realized that, I have a gift with connecting to people. I'm a communicator, I'm a collaborator, I'm a coalition builder. And so I'm an immigrant. I only came to Spokane 10 years ago with a suitcase and a half and not get 7-year-old child with tagging along with me. And so the community that I have built around me is on the basis of the fact that, I don't have money, but I work hard in the community. I help with everything and anything. And basically take it from up to the next level. I amplify the voices of folks who need to have their voices heard in places that they're not being heard. If, and that's a prime example of the fact that, I work full 40 hours a week, still finding it difficult to make ends meet, despite the fact that I have 4 degrees, I have a master's degree as well. And then there are so many folks like me in District 1 who are struggling to make ends meet, single income families. Once you pay your daycare, once you pay your rent or mortgage, you're done. There's no more money left to flex back. You only can flex back on food or on medicines, and nobody should have to live like that. That's why I'm bringing all these voices with me to the Spokane City Council. There's nobody like me there, so representation matters, which is why I'm doing this, because I'm a renter And there is not a single renter on Spokane City Council. And I think most, I
Naghmana,
believe.
sorry to interrupt, but we do have to move on to the next.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll do more on that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, we're going to go to candidates for District 3, Position 2. And we're going to start off with Lou. Lou, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I would love, I'm not on mute, great. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a lightly melanated mixed race, Black and white human living in the inland Northwest of Spokane, Washington. This region is the traditional and unceded territory of the Spokane and the First Nations that have and continue to be stewards of this land. I'm lucky enough to have worked predominantly in the nonprofit sector. So I spent almost 7 years with Boys and Girls Club. That was in the inner cities of Las Vegas after I graduated from Eastern Washington University. And then I also worked in rural Oregon for some time, and then was very excited to come back home in I believe it was 2011, and working for the clubs still. Shortly after working for the clubs here, I was recruited by Empire Health Foundation to work in philanthropy, specifically to work with Better Health Together to institute low barrier housing and community health workers here in Eastern Washington. So one of the areas that I care deeply about is houselessness and how we get to the outcome of ensuring that less humans are living on our streets and being able to be housed with dignity and respect. In addition to that, I have also, when I left nonprofit work, I went to the for-profit world, specifically to work in the cannabis industry. Through all of this, I've been an operations person, so understanding how people and technology and policy work together to get us outcomes is what I live and breathe for. I never thought that I would run for public office because I like the behind the scenes so much. I love seeing other people be successful and reach their goals, and for most of my career, that's what this has been about. I think it's really important that we start talking to our communities the difference between deregulation and efficiency in policy and procedure. We don't want deregulation. We want efficiencies in policy and procedures that get us where we need. And finally, I am the president and one of the founding members of the Spectrum LGBT+ Center. I represent them on the Spokane Regional Domestic Violence Coalition. I'm on INBA's board. I've also helped start the first Black Chamber of Commerce for Spokane. And I'm on the State Equity Cannabis Commission as well, and the State LGBT Commission for Economic Development.
Woo! It's a lot in those 2 minutes. Good job, Luke. All right, next up, Zach.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for putting on this forum and bringing us all together. My name's Zack Zappone, and I was born and raised here right in the 3rd District, graduated from North Central High School, just like my grandpa, and became a teacher after going to college in Washington, D.C., where I realized not everybody had the same opportunities and chances. I was one of 3 students from all of Eastern Washington in my freshman class, and my roommate was one of 22 boys from an all-boys private school in New Jersey. It wasn't fair. The system was rigged against people. And so I left. I would come home and work at McDonald's, and my roommate would work on Wall Street. And so I came back home to Eastern Washington to be a teacher because I believed education was that pathway for socioeconomic opportunity. But as a teacher, I saw there were too many problems in our community that impacted us students and families outside of the classroom when it came to housing, healthcare, transportation, economic opportunity. So again, I left the classroom and got my master's degree in public policy and studied urban planning at Princeton University. There I worked in healthcare and transportation. Moved back home to Spokane, back to the 3rd District, just in time for the pandemic, and stepped up to serve our community during a crisis and volunteered last summer to feed over 100,000 people who were in need with food. I'm running for city council because our city and our region is facing a crisis, a growth crisis, and what our future is going to look like. I believe in a future where everybody has affordable housing, where we treat people who are homeless with respect and dignity. I believe in a future where we have economic opportunity for everyone, living wages, and the infrastructure to support it, including broadband and local workforce. And I want to make sure that we include prioritizing our public health and safety, especially when it comes to mental health. And so that's why I'm running for city council.
Oh, thank you so much, Zach. Really appreciate that. And Christopher, you're next.
Thank you all for having this meeting. I really appreciate it. My name's Christopher Savage. I'm running for City Council, District 3, Position 2. I'm a lifelong resident of Spokane, Washington. I wasn't born here, but I was raised here. My mom brought me and my brother up from Scottsdale, Arizona when I was just 3. And ever since then, I've fell in love with Spokane and kind of never wanted to leave. I graduated from North Central High School along with my peer, Zack Zappone. I also went to pursue a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics over at the Western Washington University over on the west side in Bellingham. That was a really interesting experience because of the two dichotomies between the east side and the west side that you kind of get used to over there. When I came back to dedicate my time here to the city at Spokane. A lot of the past jobs that I've had, I've been a Domino's delivery driver, I've been a pizza pipeline delivery driver. Through those kind of jobs, you kind of get to know your district a lot better because you just get to meet the people who are delivering pizzas and ordering pizzas and all that kind of stuff. Then I've also been a Lyft driver. That was, I love that job, but due to overregulations of the city, I had to kind of quit that job. But that job I loved, and I got to meet people from all walks of life, from, all the way down from people who are just doing their jobs, going to the hospitality industry, from people that are all the way at the top who are, nuclear analysts over at the Hanford nuclear plant in Hanford. I also have several responsibilities here in the city. I'm the vice chair of the Salary Review Commission that sets the salary of the city council and the city council president and the mayor respectively. I'm also on the Spokane County Water Conservancy Commission, which anything that has to do with commercial or industrial development through using our aquifer, it has to go through our committee to make sure that we're not using or overusing our finite supply of water that we have. My little elevator speech for my platforms is I hope to address the affordable housing crisis that we're currently going through the Growth Management Act of 1990 that was imposed on us by our Washington State legislator. I'm also hoping to address the homelessness concern that hasn't been improving since I ran 2 years ago through hopefully supporting charities that have proven methods that show that they can help these individuals and to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. Because as when public forum was still open for the whole COVID hit, I was disparaging to see how many times that they seem to just be rubber stamping legislation ordinances down at City Hall without realizing it. I hope for all your vote this coming August 3rd for the primaries, and thank you all for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you, each and every one of you again for joining us today. It really is helpful for all of our members who are going to be able to watch this to help really discern who they want championing them as their representative. So the next round is going to be questions. So each party is going to be able to ask a question, and then each candidate will be able to ask that question, and then it'll move to the next party, and so on and so forth. Each party will have about a minute or so to ask the question, and then our candidates will have about 3 minutes to give their answer. After this, we will look at closing statements. So get your 2 to 3 minute closing stump speeches ready for the end. But we're going to start off with Annette Hobbs with Washington Progressive Party. Again, she'll go ahead and ask her question, and then each candidate will answer that, and then we'll move down to the next party. All right, Annette, do you have your question ready to go?
Yes, I do. I was glad to hear a number of you mention the homelessness crisis. That's something of personal great concern to me personally, and as well to the Washington Progressive Party. So my question is, what are your ideas for concrete solutions to provide long-term housing for the homeless population in Spokane?
All right, and then first we're going to go ahead and go to Zack.
Yeah, I think that's a super important question, and a question I hear all the time on the doors or out in the community. I think when it comes to homelessness, I've studied homelessness from our nation's experts at Princeton, taken a course on it. And while nowhere has really solved the crisis of homelessness, there are best practices that we can bring to Spokane that we haven't been right now. And there are things that the council can be doing to do that. So first, we got to create the supports to get people off the streets and into shelters, and make sure that we have adequately funded shelters and enough beds for people, especially during a crisis like a heating crisis, or where we need cooling centers and warming centers in the winter. We need to have enough beds for people to get off the street. And that also takes case management, where we need to know exactly who is houseless, why they're houseless, what interventions have we done to house them. And that takes coordination across the city and the region, and we need to be supporting that. After that, we need to make sure that we have enough mental health resources, substance abuse resources in the homeless shelters, and then the transitions out of the homeless shelters. That takes partnerships with our regional employers, bringing people together to help transition people out, and making sure that we build more transitional bridge housing, small units that are affordable, because houseless people can't go from having no income into paying rent that's $1,000 a month. That's unaffordable. So we need to have a comprehensive approach to how people can get off the streets and get the sports and onto stable housing again. And we have to remember, a lot of homeless families and people do transition in and out of homelessness. It's not always a permanent state. And so we need to make sure that at the forefront, we're treating people with respect and dignity.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, Chris, you're next.
What I think we can do to address the homelessness problem is to support charities that are seen to have proven tried and true methods of trying to help these people not only get back on their feet, but become contributing members of society again. Some people may balk at this, but I support Union Gospel Mission. They are a religious-based organization, but they have shown with some of their structures and what they do, they can help people. And yes, they're not a low barrier shelter, which could be a problem for most, but they keep showing through their social media, community events, and other methods that they are rehabilitating these people in ways that are getting them back into society and into a way that can not be watched over, so that they're free to do whatever they need to afterwards. Not only that, but we need to bring in more beds for these sort of people that need to get access to these for short term. Right now, depending on what charity you are or which organization you are, if you're not addressed by the housing urban development by our federal government, they sometimes won't see what the beds are available for. And that actually causes a chain reaction effect for our police, as well as our other who are trying to get the actual information to help these individuals who are on the street. And if we can get that in line, hopefully that will help more individuals get into the places they need to, rather than having this haphazard approach that seems to be happening currently with our current administration. And it just seems to make me, not me, but all of the people kind of angry that there's not more tried and true methods that are happening with this. And also just the low barrier shelters need to be done in a lot better way. There was a pop-up shelter that happened on Garland, and I went up and down Garland talking to the business owners, the residents, the apartment owners, and it was not done in the right way. And I'm not opposed to low barrier shelters, but if they are going to happen, they need to have communication with the community leaders, the business owners, the residents, so that there is a top down and bottom up approach, so that everyone is involved, knowing that these people are trying to help each other out, because we're all a community, we're all neighbors. So hopefully through those methods, we can approach the homelessness concern in a better way than we have the past 2 years.
Thank you, Christopher. Lou, it's to you. Oh, you're on mute, Lou.
I am a huge proponent of low barrier housing, and all of the best practices and data shows that that works. It's a misconception that creating rules and regulations for our houseless population is what transitions them into long-term secure housing. So, as someone who's worked directly with the population of houselessness and those individuals who struggle with this, I know firsthand the challenges that it takes to get people stable. Low barrier housing is one, and we also need to increase the number of vouchers that we have available for our city and for our community. The reality is that housing costs are going up more quickly than the amount of pay available to community members, and it's imperative that we keep people housed. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we have supportive housing. Many of our community members who are struggling with houselessness need supportive housing, and investing in supportive housing is a way to keep people housed. With that is transition housing, is finding, and I do believe we have the money available for this. And the reason that it hasn't been as successful as it could be in Spokane is because people are making decisions based on their assumptions or their stereotypes or their beliefs outside of what is really happening with our community members that struggle with houselessness. These are our community members. These are our community members who are veterans, and for those in the foster care system. In addition to that, to continue to prevent houselessness, we need tenants' rights. We need just cause eviction education, fair housing practices, and rental relocation support. Every industry has their realities, and it is not, and the rental industry is not, does not get to avoid what the market demands in terms of consumers and what our consumers need to be stable and healthy and happy. We need to change regulations so that we can create removal of limits on accessory dwellings and plans for affordable housing. I'd like to take that a step further, and that affordable housing that we buy, whether they be townhouses or condominiums, something like that, where there's a home ownership option for low income and low barrier humans. In addition to that, we need to subsidy and support, tenant supports, building assistance, and building projects receiving assistance committed to lower market rentals and primitive supportive housing. And low barrier housing has to be the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Naghmana?
First of all, we have to stop criminalizing homelessness. We really have to work on that. There's so much stigma attached to that. And I am one of those people who actually lives with that insecurity of being one missed paycheck away from being on the street. So I know exactly what that's like. I work 2-3 jobs at the same time sometimes just to make ends meet. And I worked at the Spokane Regional Health District in their opioid treatment program for 3.5 years. So I saw firsthand that not everybody who comes there for treatment is because of, addiction or that kind of thing. They're homeless. There's a certain demographic, but you get all kinds of people come from all walks of life. And resultantly, we have to be more compassionate. We, as a city, have failed our folks who are facing the situation year in, year out. I have lived here for 10 years in Spokane now. And every year, especially since the last 5 years, I've noticed we're always chasing the weather. The mayor will come up with some kind of fixed Band-Aid kind of problem, with cooling shelters or warming shelters. But I don't like the idea of all these religious associations and churches and Spokane Islamic Center, for that matter, if they decided to create a place for people to go to, because it's based on your religion. That's discriminatory. And low barrier housing is discriminatory. It's discrimination. When you want to have equity for anybody, you have to have it for everyone. And just don't give me that bullshit about people saying, oh, I'm resistant to being, I like it on the street. Not everybody's like that, and that's just bullshit. And so there's too many folks out there. We do need to continue with our eviction moratoriums, but we need the city to come through and make sure that there is money going into the landlord's pockets, which means we need rental assistance, we need utility assistance. There's a lot of money coming our way from federal grants, and we can put that money to good use, doing things like that, helping businesses with recovery. This is all part of it. And we need to put the builders, the developers, and the realtors in the same room and say, no one's coming out of there until we have a solution. Why are we not incentivizing? Why are we not doing this? Why hasn't the city council, the mayor got together on this and done this 5 years ago? We need that building stock. We have nothing available. There's less than 5.5% vacancy rate right now. Rents are going high. Every time property tax increases, my rent goes up. My income doesn't go up. I live that life where I'm totally insecure. So I understand being a renter or being on fixed income, how hard it is to live that life. People are not becoming homeless just because they choose to become homeless. That's ridiculous. We need to stop that thinking first and foremost, and then we need to move on from there. But we need to build. The city really needs to take responsibility and find solutions pronto. We've run out of time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so very much. All right, last but not least, Luke.
All right, so look, we talk to the people that are experiencing homelessness and hear from them what they need. So I live right across from a homeless shelter, and I talk to those people on a regular basis. And running a childcare, you might assume, yes, we have families who are experiencing homelessness that come to us as a safe and secure environment. And when I talk to them and hear what they want, what I hear is there isn't enough mental health access. So that's one of the biggest pieces that I want to work collectively on, to make sure that we are working with the organizations here providing mental health to do that. But even when there is mental health, what I'm hearing from the people experiencing homelessness is that it's not somebody who is from the same culture as them, or same, that can really articulate with them without those microaggressions or other things that come up. So we need to figure out how to incentivize and get people who look like the communities they serve to be able to do that. The second thing that I've been hearing directly from them is better access to treatment facilities, and not just better access to treatment facilities. So again, I serve a lot of families. They want treatment facilities where they can stay with their kids, and they could. So here in Spokane, we're known for our domestic violence that happens here, and a huge percentage of women who suffer from domestic violence, as many of you are probably aware, they end in homelessness. And so for me, it's like, what are we doing for that silent population, that population that we aren't seeing, quote unquote, on the streets? And we need to provide those spaces for them. And for me, look, I have people who run shelters here that have stuck their neck out and actually donated to my campaign. Why? Because I'm willing to talk to them. I'm willing to talk to the people experiencing homelessness to figure out what policies that we need to put into place, and that's what I plan to do. But another thing that a few people have talked about is preventative measures. So the cost of housing is going up. You heard 0.5%, and I think it's even less now, vacancy rate for rentals. So making sure that we're working with organizations like Latinos in Spokane, we're working with organizations like the Carl Maxey Center, who people trust in our community, to be able to get those assistance, to be able to break those language barriers. And that's what I want to see more of to tackle our homelessness issue. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all so very much. I just want to real quick check in with Rebecca. Mike Davis wasn't able to join us, but she did ask if there was a question that he would like us to bring in. And he's from another organization. Did he ever get back to you before we go to the next one, Rebecca?
No, unfortunately, I think he had a emergency come up with his family, and I think they had to go deal with that. So
okay, excellent. All right, so the next question is actually from me, y'all. I don't know if you guys heard about the American Anti-Corruption Act. If you have not, look that up. It's Represent Us. And it's a big part of why I think that we have so many issues today is because of corruption. So locally, how do you plan on working on making the city council, your position, more transparent and more accountable to the people? And first one, Naghmana, sorry.
I'm so sorry, you cut out a little bit. Could you repeat your question for me?
Oh, yeah. So in your position on the city council, how do you plan on making it more transparent and more accountable to the people?
So city council has all these committees, and one of the biggest things that we need to work on, that I've actually been working on in the community, is an Office of Civil Rights. And what we want to do, we put together a proposal. We worked with so Asian Pacific Islander Coalition, Spokane Human Rights Task Force, Greater Spokane Progress, which in itself is an amalgamation of almost 48 different organizations. I'm on their board as well. And Refugee Connections in Spokane. So we all got together and we put together a proposal that we presented to Brian Beggs, City Council President, I think about a month and a half ago. And how we proposed it was to make sure so that we have availability for banks and other entities, to credit unions to offer low income folks and people with lower demographics, immigrants, refugees, societies who are coming in, because Spokane is going to, we're going to be getting ready to welcome a lot more refugees very soon. So these folks need help. So we've had we want to put together a space where people can come there for a resource. And I want the Office of the Ombudsman housed in that area. And that's because, and for this whole venture to have its own funding, and obviously the transparency, and for the city council to make sure that they approve the budget for it in such a way that that is there year in, year out without having to apply for a renewal every time, or like, oh, we don't have the budget, therefore we're gonna let this go. That shouldn't happen. So that's the part of the proposal. So we would have resources, we would have education and outreach and awareness, house the ombudsman's office in that area, and then basically just to have it like a one-stop shop kind of an area, so that you can go there anytime that you have any kind of an issue. This is really important for the whole community, because it's communities of color. As you know, Spokane is one of the top, in the top third. It's number 3 in the nation for domestic violence, for police brutality. And yes, we've been successful in a couple of things. Like we had the school boards come in and taking care of the school to prison pipeline. They've really been able to disrupt that, thankfully. And we are making progress, but we can't do it without the community. The community has to step in and help as much as we can, have our say. And that's what I would propose, keeping it very clear and accountable on the city council level.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. All right, Luke, your turn.
Yeah, so stuff that you're doing right now, what you're doing right now, right? You're being able to get participants to come on, hear us out, hear what we're saying. And that's the first step, making sure that we are electing people that show results, and also can make sure that the policies and stances are wide open for people to hear. So I applaud what y'all are doing. Naghmana talked about the ombudsman. I do have the pleasure of sitting on the ombudsman, and one of the big things for me is making sure that we have more independent oversight of the police ombudsman. We need that. That's what the people voted on, and we need to see that through. But again, going back to my original stance, is we need to be able to bring groups like this, bring groups like Latinos in Spokane, bring groups like the Carl Maxey Center, bring groups that are typically underrepresented in spaces where the information is there for them. We need to meet them where they're at instead of expecting people to come to us. And that's what I look to do every single day. We have a mechanism here right now in Spokane through our neighborhood councils. And one thing that's happened throughout COVID is we've been able to go virtual. And what I want to see here in Spokane, and one of my biggest pieces, is really expanding broadband internet access to people, because it has so many benefits for people. But that also allows the opportunity to be able to participate in forums like this and that education. So to me, I'm not the type of candidate that's going to come in and say, oh, I'm going to fix everything. It takes all of us, right? And the more we're able to spread the word, the more we're able to get people in, the more we're able to break the language barriers, then the more we're able to really see policy that reflect what the community needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Lou, you're up.
Hi, thank you. I think that we started off on a good foot. We need oversight, and I think oversight is key. In addition to that, I think that nothing about us without us. So many times policy and procedure gets put into place, and we are not speaking to the parties that need to be spoken to. Our Indigenous community members right now need to be leading these conversations, especially here in the Northwest. Their voices need to be heard. In addition, impact versus intent. So many times we create policy around what our intent is with little to no realization of what that impact means. Most of the time, that's because our politicians haven't lived that life. They haven't had a housing voucher. They haven't had to depend on public transportation to get them there. They haven't been 16-year-old moms who are worried about how they're going to get to that next opportunity in life. And we need that type of representation. In addition to that, I'd like to see a community budget. I think that there are ways to get out to the community what we're talking about and how we're spending our money and how they can provide impact with that. In addition, I work with the Equity Coalition, which are all the small business associations here in Eastern Washington. And I think when it comes to an opportunity to engage, whether it be economic development or policy and procedure associated with social services, we have to have the people impacted at the table. And too often we are once again, making decisions for people without the time for conversation. There are many efforts throughout the nation. I believe it's called the Strong Towns. And when you look at them, they're looking at what is happening now and what are the policies in place and what are going to get us the outcomes. We need to quit arguing about what the minutia is in between the outcomes and just be honest about what that gets us. Too often we are looking at these big growth scenarios instead of looking at what is happening right now and the small incremental change that we can make collectively to have a better community. And so when I think about making it more transparent and making it more accessible, it's language too. And I'm deeply connected with these communities. I grew up in Spokane, 5 generations of my family called this home. I bought my house in District 3 5 years ago. I have dealt with the same challenges that our community is dealing with. And one of the biggest challenges I feel is people feel left out from the process because we use inaccessible language and we present it in a way that doesn't include them. And Spokane has been notorious for doing things in secrecy and behind people's back. That's why it's even more important that our representation isn't the status quo.
Excellent, thank you. And Zach, you're up.
Yeah, I think a lot of great points have been made that I definitely agree with most people. I think, if we showed up to this forum, we all have a lot of concern about these issues too, and agree on a lot of these things. Like has been mentioned, oversight and independent oversight of government services is crucial. I think when it comes to campaigns, there's a lot of concern about who is funding our campaigns and who are you accountable to after those campaigns. And our races here in the 1st and the 3rd district, we just had a huge money drop by the National Association of Realtors, dropping over $60,000 in this race. They're the single most involved entity in Spokane City Council. And, we have the Public Disclosure Commission that advertises that. So we at least know that, but that doesn't really get out into the community and that doesn't actually penetrate. So we need to be able to change who's funding our elections and how. At the local level, there are things that we can do. Seattle has been at the forefront of that with democracy vouchers. And that has been a great way to get new candidates who aren't backed by money into campaigns. It's all about small donors talking to people at events, at their doors, in your community, and helping power campaigns with small dollar donations to flood the system with money instead of just capping it. Other ways that we can increase transparency is, I think, having been a North Sider all of my life, there's a lot of concern about the South Hill and Spokane having too much power and overrepresentation. And that's not just in, council, right? We have districts that breaks that up, but there's a lot more ways that decisions are made. There's multiple faces of power. And that comes down to the committee level, to what consultants are hired to present information to these boards that form the policies at the very beginning. And so I'm a big believer in inviting all people to the table and making sure their voices are heard. But beyond that, we actually need to go through a framework and having reports that report out to how are these equity lenses actually being considered and reported on. And that needs to be publicly disclosed. We also need to make sure that there is always public testimony at forums and meetings that people get to have their voices heard. And that there isn't just a consultant's report dropped at the forum that then that council or board say, okay, great, this is what the research we're using and we're moving forward without public comment and scrutiny. So we have to start at the very beginning of where decisions are made. Council is kind of the last tier, but we have the boards and who's invited in the room to make those decisions, and then what policy proposals are even presented in the first place, and making sure that those policy proposals are presented. We need to start there because it's quicker and easier to change those policies, make it transparent and more open, having more people that are more reflective in a full equity, racial justice, social justice report about each policy proposal.
Oh, thank you so much, Zach. And finally, Christopher.
Thank you. What I think we should do is, hopefully if it hasn't been done by then, that we need to open public forum again. Back in 2019, when it was open, there is a individual called Mr. Yamato. He's passed now, but I vehemently disagreed with everything that he went down there and said. But what I admired really much about it was that he came up there and he was able to voice his opinion each time. And that's what really got me to think that this is really important for other people, because I think it's a way of helping not only city council listen to other people's views, but everyone else in the room. Because I feel like with other people and difference of views, we can actually talk to each other and hopefully discuss things, especially when it's at a city council forum where there's a little bit more decorum required, that we can get to the right solutions without trying to get at each other's throats. Another thing is to get involved with your neighborhood councils. These councils were made back in 1990 by Mayor Jack Garrity to help the autonomous political entities to check the power of the city council. And they can happen, and they have been doing this. I mean, there is North Indian Trail Neighborhood Council is talked about in whispers and corners, and developers around here in Spokane, because they were the only one of the few neighborhood councils to actually check the power of not only city council, but Harlan Douglas, one of the biggest developers here in Spokane. Now, whether you're for developers or against developers, that's a huge sign of showing that they can mobilize their neighborhood councils to show that they have the power to say, hey, no, this is our neighborhood, not just part of the city or the district. This is our neighborhood. And this is, I think we can do that through more participation through the neighborhood councils, and hopefully through the city council, I can help bring more information about that, because of right now, there's a lot of neighborhood councils that don't promote themselves too well or don't have the information infrastructure to get the news out there. And that's one of the things that's hurting them right now. And I think that those two things could be the biggest items that could help bring more political participation, as well as stop with corruption at City Hall, as well as across any local government.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, next question comes from the Black Panthers Party of Washington. Bunchy Carter, you're up. You might still be on mute there.
I am. My apologies. I had a brain fart for a second. My apologies. Thank you so much for having me on. Candidates, I'm just curious. I did some research. As you know, I live in Western Washington. So I did some research into Spokane. I came to find out that you guys have what is considered to be the third most deadly police force in the country. I find that problematic, being that Spokane is not very big. I guess my question to you would be, what as a city council member would you do, or what is your plan to increase the amount of police accountability and make sure that the killology that is being taught to the police officers in Spokane is done away with? And more importantly, make sure that the person who's currently in leadership, I can't even say his name, to be honest with you, but is no longer in that position. I know that being the police chief is, being the police chief is a very important role. The police have a very specific duty to the community. And from what I can see in Spokane, they're not exactly doing that duty. And I can honestly say that that's everywhere. But specifically speaking of Spokane, what are your plans as a city council member to address these things and to find a better way to make sure that the citizens of Spokane are safe?
Thank you so much, Bunchy. First up, let's go to Christopher.
Thanks for the question. It's kind of going to be a little bit of the same kind of answer as the last one. I advocate going to your neighborhood councils and the community assembly that's here provided, at least in Spokane, because back in 2019, Major Ken King of SPD came in and did this whole presentation about the updated use of force policies that a year later had come up in the news about how it was a little bit barbaric, a little bit archaic of all the stuff. But when I was having the meeting, everyone there out of the 29 neighborhood councils looked at it and thought had no problem with it. So that's why I advocate for people getting involved with their neighborhood councils, at least here in city of Spokane, is because this evidence and this kind of information starts out at the ground level, and it can be there available for the people that need it. And with that in mind, we can get in front of the situations before they hit the news and hopefully address it with a better solution than coming after the fact. We're chasing down the problem and just doesn't seem to get any better. So hopefully by getting more involved with your local governments, it will help by trying to check that and hopefully address that problem better.
Thank you. Lou, how about you?
Lou or Luke?
Lou. Lou.
Hi. So I am actively engaged in working towards addressing the fact that we are the third deadliest police force in the nation. Although for some reason we've identified proportionate data as junk. So we have to rely on just hard data, but we would like to see a reduction in that hard data regardless of how you want to verbalize it. I would also indicate that I am endorsed by the Spokane Community Against Racism, or known as SCAR. They were the first people to put out a platform for change. In that platform for change, it specifically identifies how we can change the way that we respond to our community in need. In addition to that, I worked all summer, last summer specifically, to have these conversations with people so we can understand that the way that we respond to people in need within this city is not okay. And that we have a responsibility to triage 911 calls and respond to them effectively. I also think that we should change our cop shops. Our cop shops should be housed with social workers and people that can connect humans with the resources that they need. I find that to be a better use in our money and a way better return on investment. In addition to this, I think we should quit playing with the guild when it comes to their bullying of our city council and their lack of desire to have oversight. I'm sorry, if you are going to be a police officer and compare yourself to a doctor or a nurse, which our force has done, then you should carry absolutely the same insurances that they carry, because right now our force is costing us a lot of money. I will also talk to about the 7th of every month at noon. We have a mother that protests outside of out of Spokane City Hall, or not City Hall, in front of the courthouse, because her son was killed January 7th of 2019, and our police force is still not held accountable to this. I know people personally who have been victims of our officers, and they have proven that they are not the right people to respond to people in need. And so one of the first things we would do is push oversight, in addition to looking at how we respond to 911 calls. We do not need officers to police every ounce of people in crisis. We need people who are prepared to respond to crisis, to respond to those people in need, because that's what keeps my brother from being pulled over and potentially hurt. I've been pulled over with my brother in the car, who's much darker complected than me. I know how our police force responds. I've also been pulled over by myself, which is a vastly different experience than if I'm pulled over with my darker complected brother. And this is the reality that we're facing here, whether they wanted to admit it or not. And I think that our city council needs stronger people to stay in this space and who understand data, which I have a deep relationship with data, to be able to say, no, this isn't okay, and oversight it's not negotiable. It just is.
Excellent, thank you. Zach?
Yeah, thanks for the question. This is a topic that comes up frequently, is how to have oversight of our police and make sure that we have a police force that works best for our community. It is really discouraging when we have a sheriff who will spend taxpayer dollars and time to go through and try to disprove data and facts and what's happening in our community, instead of actually taking the time to talk to his police force, his law enforcement force, and make changes around that. The data is true, right? Like, data doesn't lie. And so we do have a very deadly police force in Spokane. A lot of that is from permitted use of force. And so we need to work on making sure that we have less reasons to use force in Spokane in the first place. And then after that, we also should make sure we have strong accountability and oversight. and hold police accountable. I'm a teacher, and our union protects bad teachers, and I think that's a problem too, right? We should be making sure that the police union, they nationally came out against protecting bad cops. And so we need to make sure that we have a due process and make sure that we have that accountability. So we should be working to help law enforcement do what they do best, which is enforce critical laws, deter crime, and respond to emergencies. Some common sense reforms that have broad bipartisanship appeal are what we can do right now to make those changes, like de-escalation trainings and anti-bias trainings, hiring addiction and behavioral health specialists to handle nonviolent situations that police are not needed. We should also be recruiting a police force that doesn't feel the need or is less likely to use force in the first place. And that's actually by starting to hire more women as police officers. They're less likely to use that. When you look at psychology, it was not based on their anti-bias training, but it was actually a masculinity threat that caused police officers to use force in the first place. And so if we have a police force with more women, we would have less deaths in our country. After that, we should work on supporting the diversion programs, like the mental health crisis stabilization facility that we have in Spokane. This will save taxpayers money and get people back on their feet and on track rather than revolving door in and out of the criminal justice system. So I support making changes to hold police accountable and making changes to our community that will prevent the need for law enforcement to use deadly force in the first place.
Thank you so much, Zach. All right, Luke, now it's your turn.
So I want to applaud our state first. And I know a lot of y'all have been definitely working on this front with criminal justice reform in our state. And I think we should give ourselves a pat on the back for what was able to be passed on a statewide level in regards to use of force, in regards to how law enforcement conducts their safety of if you will, of the community. I am on the police ombudsman, like I said, and one thing that I keep on pushing is making sure that there's independent oversight like the people voted for overwhelmingly in Spokane. And to go a little further, I am definitely a youth guy, and we ask our youth, and I'm sure all of you have had this experience as well, when you ask youth, what are your rights? A lot of times they don't. So I'm partnering with the Skill Center. I'm partnering with Tommy Williams, who leads the criminal justice program, a person of color, leading the criminal justice program at the Skill Center here in our neighborhood, to really equipped our youth with the tools to know what their rights are, and also equipped our neighbors with the tools. For me, one of the big things that I'm looking for is making sure that, so I'm a 6'7" Black dude in Spokane. So I've had a long history of being stopped randomly because I fit the description of, I guess, 0.5% of the population here that, and I say this jokingly, but when it does happen, my heart's beating, my hands on the steering wheel, pressed hard, and I want to get to a place where we don't have that. And to me, it's making sure that, yeah, you can't just randomly stop someone because the description's a 5'10" white guy and you stop a 6'7" Black dude. But the other piece too is making sure that we grow law enforcement from our community, right now, the percentage, I believe, and you could check it, but I believe 60% of our law enforcement live outside of our neighborhood. So when you think about that and you're thinking about policing, well, are they from the community? Do they look like the community? Does the community know them by first name? Those are very important things when we're talking about safety. So these are the measures that I would like to see put into place when we talk about law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Naghmana.
So the problem with going last is everybody takes all your points and runs with them already, right? So it's like, okay, I can only reiterate the fact that, it is a case of 88% white city that we live in. And I face this issue because I work in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I suffer this issue with pretty much everything across the board because we just don't have enough people of color in the area right here to be able to pull from that pool, right? So, I mean, entire state of Washington, we have 8% Black folks. Spokane, exactly half of that, 4% Black folks live here. But our population in the incarcerated, in the jails is 22% Black folks, for instance. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Bunchy. We have a huge problem here in Spokane when it comes to, being targeted because of your race and being targeted because of your, culture or because you're not the same color or ethnicity. And it translates, obviously, it goes up the tier and it translates into the police force using their, well, we're the third highest in the nation where police brutality or police force is concerned. That's how it's termed, right? But that basically boils down to discrimination and the fact that we don't have enough people of color in the force and the fact that we don't have people of color who are seen as being wanting to get on the force. We need to have a Black mayor. We need to have a Black police chief, for things to definitely change. And I would love to see that. Seriously, a person of color anyways, if not necessarily just Black. But the reason why I'm just saying Black is because I'm brown. And yeah, we have a good, big Latino population in Spokane. But people from my part of the world, Southeast Asian community, there's like 10 or 15 families here in Spokane. So it becomes an issue when access is not there and we are kind of oppressed in a sense of speaking, so that it's not open to everybody. So we need the barriers removed. We need better access. We need better outreach on behalf of this police department. They really need to be seen as making more of an effort to ensure that there are people of color incorporated into the police force. The police guilds should not have the kind of power that it does. Absolutely 100%. We need that Office of Civil Rights. We need that Office of the Ombudsman to have independent oversight, to be able to go in and ask for any kind of explanation at any time so that people feel safe, people feel heard. And we just don't have that right now. So these are the things that we are battling with. You're absolutely right. Spokane is a little scary, but as an immigrant, I've lived here for 10 years and this is where I've chosen to make my home and I like it here. And that's why I'm running, is to make sure that there is a change. That's why you see all of us here, because we want to make that change. We want it to be different and we are going to make it different. Because just today, there was an article in the newspaper, and this is something that I've been asking for, is to say that anytime there is a call for 911 call, not just police officers, but a mental health professional should go with them. And they're talking about already. There was an article in the paper this morning, and that they said that they are looking at sending out mental health professionals instead of police officers to go to each house. Small, tiny step, but we're making progress.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. All right, so Mark Mixon has joined us now from the People's Party of Washington, POW. Mark, would you go ahead and like to ask the final question we have from the parties tonight?
Sure. And I apologize for being late. I was in another meeting, so I've not been able to hear all the questions and all the responses, which hopefully Rebecca will be able to update me later. I have sort of a generalized question, and I don't 100% know how the mayor proposes a budget. Y'all have to ratify that. Is that correct? Right? And so my question is general about city government and what each of you, it's a two-part question, what each of you views as the most important function of city government, And will you advocate to make city budgets reflect that?
Oh, excellent. And you were up first, Naghmana. You do not have to be the last one this time.
But I apologize, Mark, you were cutting in and out. I really didn't hear very well what you asked. Could you repeat your question?
Certainly. I'll try to get closer. Maybe that will help also. It's a general question about the function of city government. What do you regard as the most important function of city government? And will you work and advocate to make city budget reflect that?
Oh, absolutely. I feel that there is the health and human services aspect and the governance part of it. That's really, really important for Spokane City Council, for instance. We owe it to our constituents to be able to do the best we can. And I'm progressive, so I'm going to make sure that folks who are talking about, when we're talking about equity, and we're talking about inclusion, and we're talking about belonging, and we're talking about making sure that people are put first, those kind of policies are in place so that we can all thrive as a city and a community. And the main reason why I'm running is to make sure that underrepresented voices are heard on council. And so that, I would like to make sure that we have stakeholders, groups, and collaborative entities so that we can come to decisions and conclusions for any policy that we're about to put into place is first run by the people so that, we can gauge access, we can gauge impact, we can gauge results. How do people actually feel about something before we even start to put it across as a policy? Those are the kind of things that I would like to do. And did you say what would be the first thing that I would like to do on city council?
Mostly what you feel is the most important function of the city.
Making sure that we have diversity on there. Making sure that people who do not have their voices heard are there, and it is equitable. That's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Luke.
All right. So for me, and this is very near and dear to my heart. So being here in the Northeast, and I think Naghmana will agree with me too, we have the lowest voter turnout in all of Spokane. So what I would love to see is voters come out and exercise the right that they have. And we have people who don't feel like they have say. And I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can right now to help people understand, to help the attendees here understand, even if they're not in Spokane, that you do have power. And that power is, one, exercising the right to vote, and then number two, making sure that you're trying to stay as plugged into every channel possible. And for me, in 4 years, 5 years, I would like to see District 1 that is intensely plugged in, and in the way that they're able to. So if that's eliminating transportation barriers for them to be able to speak, then we're doing that. If it's making sure that, like I said before, there's internet access for people, that we're doing that. So I want people not only to be at the table, but I want them running the table, because that's what they deserve. That's what they vote for. And I do think we have the mechanisms to be able to do that. We're seeing groups like this, like you said, y'all thought about this, in a short period of time, and look what you're able to do. So there is that capability. And we just need to empower the people to understand that it's not easy, but they do have voice. So that's what I'm looking to do right now. And I would love to be able to prioritize investments. Like I said, broadband internet is something that there's a ton of money federally coming to support that. Let's figure out how to get it to the people so that the people can tell us what they want. So my job is easier, and all I gotta do is go figure out how to make policy to make it happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Christopher, you're next.
What I think the function of government for a local government is to provide just basic infrastructure, telecommunications, roads, sewers, pipes, all that stuff that makes a society run. And way to reflect that that I would do is back like in 2019, there is something that was called the Real Estate Excise Tax Fund, called REIT for short. And this was a tax that was taken on every home that was sold. They put a 1.75 tax on it, and every buyer that bought it, another 1.75 tax on it. And then all those funds went into a pretty much slush fund of $10 to $13 million that could have been used to put back into community. And there were several articles about how the city council was going to say, yes, we need to put this back in here. I'm going to vote into this and we're going to do this. Unfortunately, one of the few things that I actually agree with Kate Burke on, I disagree with a lot of other stuff, but what I agreed with her is that she said that she voted against when they reallocated all that money into the sportsplex that's now being built on the North Bank. They put about $10 million into a $50 million project that should have been more supported by private by private investors and all that, rather than taxpayer money, because that money was not only built off of the boon of this housing market here in Spokane that we've been, generously beginning for some people, that it was promised by the city council when they were asked several times to be put back into local infrastructure projects, such as West Central on Boone Avenue, which is one of the highest poor neighborhoods in our state right now, along with Hilliard. And that's why we need to focus on neighborhoods like this, because they desperately need these infrastructure projects they pay taxes into, and they seem to be getting the short end of the stick, which is unfortunate, because these are the poorest hit parts of our state, and they need this kind of funding, and it should be reflected within the budget.
Thank you so much. All right, Zach, it's your turn.
Yeah, I say I'm running for city council because I believe everyone deserves a fair shot. And I think that is the role of city government, is to provide the infrastructure, the services, the guidelines to make sure that everyone in our community has a fair shot to live a life that they want, to be successful, to be content and happy. What that looks like when it comes to our city budget is really reflected in making sure that people are safe, right? Like, first, if people aren't safe, they can't thrive. So we need to make sure that we have a safe community. How that is represented is also making sure that basic needs are met: housing, food security, education, and all those basic needs are met, because then people are more likely, or healthcare, mental health especially, make sure that all of those needs are met, and then people are more likely to thrive in their community, and we have less rates of crime to start off with. And so a budget that I would be focused on is really focused on a people first budget that's focused on housing and homelessness, treating people with respect and dignity, getting them mental health services that they need. After that, making sure we have the infrastructure that we need: broadband, developing a local workforce that promotes living wage jobs and recruits or connects people to those. Making sure we have the infrastructure to support our schools, that we have walkable neighborhoods and sidewalks that people feel safe to walk to and from school, and to get groceries, and that basic livable neighborhood. What I say, prioritizing, public health and safety, mental health resources, the housing, and especially when it comes to housing, city plays a big role in making sure that people feel or have the ability to have affordable houses, protections that are necessary to continue living, and then promoting a system of opportunity for our community where everybody has that chance to get ahead. And so a budget with me as a council member would focus on those areas of housing, education, infrastructure, and human services, especially around mental health.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Lou, you get to close this section out. Take it away, Lou.
I actually love a budget. I have had an opportunity to have the city's budget in my lap, the giant binder. And to me, I would spend hours poring over a budget and love every minute of it. But I also realize that that's not the case for most people. What I would say is how we create a more transparent budget and more engaged budget. And I mentioned this earlier, it can be called sometimes a community budget. I've also heard it called a citizen's budget. Ultimately, clearly identifying where revenue goes and what it provides to taxpayers, linking government expenditures to outcomes that taxpayers can observe. For example, how much it costs to fix each pothole and how much was being spent for each visitor in the public library. Those are great examples. And I think Spokane really started on that with our sustainability action plan. In that action plan, we're able to see how we reduce greenhouse gases, the social benefit, the investment costs, and the economic benefit. I truly believe that we can create a budget that creates those line items that are easily accessible to the community, just like we did for the sustainability action plan. We can have a budget action plan every single year where people truly see the investment costs and the economic benefit for that type of spending. In addition to that, one of the things that within those budgets you would want to see is input indicators, output workload indicators, and intermediate outcomes. So if we say we're going to resolve homelessness or houselessness and create a path for that, we can see along the way every year we invested in it and how we've been able to adjust those numbers. End outcomes, effectiveness indicators, and explanatory information. In addition to that, we have to take it to the people. We need people who are representing us, who are actually not having transactional relationships with our community members, but authentic relationships with our community members. We need to know who our community champions are, those who are working with our marginalized population, help them get that budget and explain it into the hands of the people that it affects. And the more we do that, I think the more people will be interested and feel empowered to be engaged. So many times I meet people, and a lot of it even came from my grandmother, that it seems too complicated. And we, I think, as leaders have a great opportunity to create a less complicated and more easily accessible, because it's just numbers and spending. It's not as complicated as we try to make it seem. And I think that we can do that. And I think that a budget that outlines clearly what we're getting for our money is exactly what we need.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so that's the end of each individual question for the candidates. So we're going into closing now. Each candidate has a couple minutes to make their closing remarks. This is a good time to mention something that's really important that you may not have been able to talk about with any of the questions. And also, please make sure you let people know where to find you, what's your website, come volunteer, all that good stuff, where to donate. And we're going to go ahead and start off with Lou, who just finished off the last question. Lou, take it away.
Oh man, I thought I'd have more time. Oh wait, I'm not starting yet. Okay, so I thank you all for your time today. The realities of growth, public health, safety, and economy must be addressed through a foundation of equity and diversity. That only lived and professional experiences should be some of the qualifying factors that get folks elected. Spokane is growing, and because we're not prepared, we are in a housing crisis. We must provide tenant protections and a path to home ownership as we change zoning laws and incentives to builders. This includes planning and mixed income housing. Racism, drug abuse, and domestic violence are public health issues, and public health issues need to be treated as such. And the community must be held accountable for the health outcomes that lead to a healthier community. That alone keeps our community safe and gets us to upstream solutions and investments. This city fired our public health officer during a pandemic due to him seeing the broader scope of public health. We can't have that. And we need people on city council who are willing to say that. Ultimately, I was a 16-year-old mom who accessed public transportation. I'm a first-generation college student born in the most socioeconomic depressed zip code in our state. I have been committed for years to seeing success in Spokane, and I will continue to do that on city council by bringing diverse stakeholders together. I am not afraid of people who disagree with me, and I've been called the velvet ball buster by my father because I can bring people together, have hard conversations, and still see their humanity. More than see their humanity, I can find solutions that we all can get behind. And I can do it without having people feel left out. And you're right, I am going to center the marginalized voices. I am going to go to our Indigenous and First Nation communities to guide us in these solutions that our community desperately needs if we are going to transcend the realities that we are experiencing today. And we will do it collectively and interconnectedly. Thank you.
Where can they find you?
Oh, www.luforyou.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lou. Next up, we have Christopher.
All right, I'll make this kind of short and sweet. I've dedicated my past several years of my life and resources to trying to figure out how the city and county runs on many multifaceted levels. I am going to bring that to city council with a lot of vim and vigor. I will be able to address all these problems better than some of the other people who are running, just because I've been to a lot of meetings, I've been through a lot of information, a lot of data, and I've been to where all these decisions have been made over the past several years. And with your help, I can be able to address these solutions in the right way. And you can find me at savageforcitycouncil.com, as well as on Twitter for just Savage for City Council, as well as on Facebook. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Christopher. All right, up next, we got Zack.
Yeah, thanks for putting this on and thanks for having us. Spokane is facing an really important election. We just got done with an election, but we're having another big election here locally. We're facing unprecedented growth that's putting strains on working families everywhere. I believe I'm the only candidate with the experiences, skills, and ideas to put forward on council to come up with real solutions and work hard to make them a reality. I think that it is important to have candidates with lived experience, but no one candidate is going to have the lived experience of our community. I bring people together and do the outreach and continue to stay connected to our community through many programs, outreach, and also by being present in our schools where every student shows up. We also need to make sure that we have a framework and written reports about equity when it comes to policies and proposals, and that's what I will champion and argue for. When it comes to the issues facing Spokane, we need to have real action on housing and homelessness. We need to have affordable housing for all folks. I'm a candidate that has a background in urban planning, has worked in urban planning and transportation, and will bring that to the forefront. That's a missing perspective that we will need on council. I'm also the only candidate that is currently working in public health and working on a COVID response right now and addressing those needs in our community. So I ask for your vote and support. You can get engaged in our election or in our campaign at zappone.com. That's zappone.com. Will be in the chat. There's a lot at stake. The progressive supermajority on councils at stake. We need to win both of these seats to make sure that we have this representation, this check on the mayor. The Realtors Association is not going to mess around. They're dropping tens of thousands of dollars. And we need everybody to get involved in this campaign, in this race, in our races, to make sure that we have that, because ultimately we need to make sure that we have this check on the mayor and a progressive future in Spokane. I believe I'm the best candidate to put that forward. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So the last three all are vying for position number 2 in District 3. Next, let's bring up the last two. We've got Naghmana. You are next.
This has been so awesome. And when you guys said that it was going to be a conversation, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I am, so as I said earlier, I don't know, some people may have missed it right at the beginning, but I'm an immigrant and I'm also Muslim. I am a single mom, I'm an educator, I'm a scientist, and I'm a renter. And the one thing that I completely forgot to mention earlier is that I also believe in there's strength in numbers. So I actually unionized my campaign. I made history by being the first ever unionized campaign on this side of the Cascades. And why did I do that is because I'm pro-labor, I'm pro-union. And this is really important to me because when I talk about strength in there being strength in numbers, I mean, we have always had a very non-diverse city council. Right now we have Betsy Wilkerson, who's the only other person of color, and she's running in this race, in this election as well, she was appointed to that position. And so right now, I think we have a really good mix of people who are from diverse backgrounds, and we are so we really have a good, chance, a really good chance to put people who look like the rest of us on council. Yes, we have a progressive majority. We need to maintain that progressive majority because we need to be able to stand up and say what the majority wants, which is what okay, I'm not going to go there. Let me rephrase that. But mainly to say that I am running because I don't see anyone on city council who looks like me or has had the experiences that I've had. So it's really important to bring all voices and all information or opinions to city council. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
And where do we find you?
Oh, peoplefornaghmana.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And next, but definitely not the least, is Luke. Luke, your turn.
Yeah. So, hey, thank you again for holding this. The funny thing is, all of us are running in these races, and we've actually become friends. So we'll all talk to each other and share ideas and stuff. So I appreciate just having my colleagues on here, and I appreciate y'all being able to put this on and give people a space to be able to vet us out, hear what we all have to say. And my case, the case for Luke Jasmin III is quite simply, I get things done. So I don't just talk about it. We can have our ideals, but it's a different thing to work collaboratively and actually have things in place. And if you look at my resume, if you look at what I've been able to do, I do just that. And that's what the Northeast needs right now. That's what Spokane needs right now. They need people who are going to work collaboratively and make sure that there's policy that get into place that get to the people that it's supposed to represent. So definitely would love as much support as possible. Housing, infrastructure, safety, those are my things. And we need it badly right now, and we need safety that looks like what the people define safety as. We need our infrastructure in the sense of making sure that there's high quality and accessible, affordable early learning for everybody. We need to make sure that we have, like I said, internet access to people, especially in the Northeast. And then we need affordable housing options so that our people are not getting displaced. And that's what I bring. Jasmin, the number 4, Spokane.com, 509-981-5595. Appreciate y'all, and thank you.
Oh, thank you guys so much. So again, the last two were District 1, Position 2. We want to thank every organization who was able to come and represent and ask questions tonight. And of course, all of the candidates for taking the time out of your guys' very busy schedule. I can only imagine. We do appreciate that. We have recorded this. We will send out the recording to each and every one of you to be able to share out with your prospective organizations and or campaigns. You can also, if you have a video person who wants to just cut out certain pieces, feel welcome. This is just to help out all of our constituents to get to know who's truly there running to represent them. So thank you all very, very much. And I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And you guys have a fabulous evening.